Hello, my lovelies. It's been about a month since I recorded the last video on the topic of autism and specifically my experience of being diagnosed. And I will put a link to that video in the description below and on the thingamajiggy at the end of this video. This is not going to be as polished as I would like it to be because I've tried so many times to sit down and script this and I just can't. But this time I have got bullet points. Yay! So in case you haven't seen the other video, I was diagnosed as having generalized anxiety disorder when I was about 19. It was partway through my degree and I had a breakdown at university. And for over 20 years since that diagnosis, I believed that that was what I was struggling with. That was my flavour of mental illness. But since I've been diagnosed as autistic, some things have clicked into place in my head. That's no generalised anxiety disorder, that's autism. Somebody said to me on Twitter the other day, what's the point? This is a paraphrase. What's the point of having a diagnosis that late in your life? It's not going to change anything, is it? Is it not going to have any kind of impact? Oh boy, it has had a big impact. Because now I understand the underlying mechanisms beneath why I was having so many physical sensations of panic. And more than that, because I have a different understanding of it, a better understanding of what is really going on, it helps to prevent a spiraling thought pattern that I always used to fall into, namely, I'm having some kind of extreme panic sensations in my body, some kind of panic response. My heart is racing, I'm sweating, I feel hyper alert, I feel like I'm ready to flee or fight at any moment. Just every part of me is on edge. The next part of that thought process would be, what is causing that? What is it in my environment? Is there a monster about to kill me? Is there a knife-wielding maniac who is launching themselves at me in this moment? Because that's what it feels like. And of course, there would be nothing in the environment 9 times out of 10 that justified the way that my body was feeling. And that disconnect between what my body felt, what my mind was doing, and the environment, I used to think was because of generalised anxiety disorder. When you feel like somebody is about to kill you and there's nobody in your environment who's about to do that, what I found at least was that my brain would look for a reason and then it would be, okay, there's nothing in my environment, so there must be something going on in my head. What am I worried about? May not necessarily be anything conscious. Okay, is there something in my unconscious that I'm worried about or stressed? No, a lot of the time. Couldn't access it. So then there would be worrying about what was I actually worried about and couldn't access at the time. Not great. And then when none of these things could give me the answer of why I was feeling that way, I would start to think things like, it's because I know that something terrible is about to happen. The generalised anxiety disorder diagnosis enabled me to have, I now know to be an incorrect understanding of what was going on in my brain and my body, but it had a label. I had read up a lot about it. I have a degree in psychology. I did all of the research. I came up with as many techniques as I could to deal with that. But there was always a sense of powerlessness for me because no matter what I did, it didn't go away. And I just got to the point where I accepted that I would always be a hugely anxious person, that I would find everything difficult in a way that lots of people don't. and that I was always going to feel this way. And the only conclusion I could come to was that I just had to be super brave and carry on and do all of the things I wanted to do, regardless of how terrified I felt. And I still believe that, by the way. I am not magically unafraid of things now that I know that I'm autistic, as I will explain. But because I don't react very well to drugs at all, I didn't go down the medication route. As an aside, apparently it's a very common thing for people who are autistic to not have the usual experience of medication. And with lots of other things I'd tried over my life, it was clear that that was not going to work for me. Now that I understand that I just have a different neurotype, my brain is just wired differently to the way that I thought it was before. It's changed everything. So there are 3 things now that I have my diagnosis, that I know contribute to that physical sensation of panic and that I can deal with differently, which gives me a sense of control that I never had when I thought it was generalized anxiety disorder. And what I'm going to do is talk about each one. So the first is environmental stressors. I didn't realize until I started to really research autism and until I actually went through the assessment process and discussed it as part of that 7-8 hour long, however long it was, assessment process, just how much environmental factors can have an impact on the way that I function. One of the first times that I realized it may be something like that was because I found that I always got very stressed when going into coffee shops. And in coffee shops, they have the big kind of coffee machine where it's like noises all the time, and it's awful. I sounded a bit like a duck. They're haunting me. And clinking of cups and sudden loud noises that I can't predict exactly and are beyond my control. And I just had this realization, it must be about 2-3 years ago now, that whenever I was in the queue waiting for my coffee, I would be bouncing up and down on my legs, on my heel, like raising my heels up and down and jiggling my knees, and my shoulders would be up around my ears, and I would feel so stressed. And of course I thought, oh, I am an anxious person. This is my mental illness. And I would just collect my coffee and then go as far away from the coffee machines as I could, usually into a corner. I didn't make the connection between the physical sensation of stress and panic in my body and the fact that there were just really loud noises. And then a year or so later, when I was seriously considering the diagnosis, the assessment rather, that route, I did an event in London. And afterwards, I was sharing a hotel room with my child and with my best friend. And the event went brilliantly. It was all good, all fine. I could not wind down. I could not stop feeling incredibly tense. And I thought, oh, I'm just unable to wind down because I'm an anxious person. It was really, really hot. It was during the summer. And so the AC fan was running in the hotel room. And when I just absolutely could not get to sleep and I was stuck in a room with 2 other people, I had to get up. And my bestie was like, are you okay? And I was like, oh, like on the brink of a full-blown panic attack. So I thought at the time. And they switched off the AC. And the impact was instantaneous. I suddenly went, And that low level noise was really screwing me up. It's also not just noise. It can just be too much of everything. So shopping centres I find incredibly difficult to deal with. When they're busy, it's a million times worse. When they're busy in the winter, it's even worse again because of temperature changes and because of the fact that I usually am wearing a coat and then I'm too hot and too cold and too hot and too cold, and there's all of the people, there's all of the noise, there's different lighting in different shops, weird artificial lighting everywhere, hundreds of conversations that are going on around me, the occasional child screaming, blah, 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 blah. Any environment like that, suddenly super, super, super stressed. Going into Lush, which for people who aren't in the UK, I don't know if I think they're already in the UK, I'm not sure, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's basically a company that makes really, really, really intensely scented like bath bombs and soaps and shampoos and things, which are all openly on display because they have them in big blocks that they cut up for you. The smell is so overwhelming. I went into a Lush shop 2-3 years ago and I had to leave because it was giving me a panic attack. And I look back and laugh and it's like, really? Really, you had a panic because it was too smelly? And yep. That's why I thought that a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder was correct, because like, in my mind at the time, it was like, well, why else am I behaving like this? Why else am I feeling like this? I must be mentally ill. No. What the diagnosis of autism has helped me to realize is that my brain is just wired very differently. It has difficulty processing incoming data, incoming sensory information, and that when there is too much, when it is too dialed up too high is the only way I can describe it, whether that's sound or scent or multiple different sensory inputs all at the same time, my body responds with the sensation of extreme anxiety and panic. My heart races, I tense up, I can't keep still very easily, I judder and fidget, and I feel incredibly distressed. Knowing that that is just a sensory processing issue and that it is my brain, I guess, I'm theorizing here, my brain signaling, oh, this is bad, we can't handle this, body, tell her that we need to go now, we need to remove ourselves from this situation, I can't handle this. Maybe that's what the mechanism is. But understanding that it's that, rather than, oh dear, I guess I'm just mentally ill, is hugely helpful. So basically, very, very few things are automatic for me, and in particular, social interactions and behaviours. They just aren't automatic. I've learnt them. And I have to effectively pull down a file, that's what it feels like in my brain, of, I am in this location, in this social context, therefore I will behave in this way. However, if too many things are being required all at once, or too many files, I guess, are being requested at once, I start to get very, very stressed. And the same physical sensations happen again. So, for example, there is a whole set of behaviours and interactions which are filed under when you arrive at a hotel. You go through the doors, you find what looks like a reception desk, you interact with a human or some sort of automated system, depending on where you're staying. You provide information in return for getting a room key. If there's a receptionist, there is usually some kind of exchange about how to get to your room. This is all very straightforward. I am very comfortable with this behavioral subroutine. But when it's a hotel that I am staying at because of a convention, and the lobby is filled with people who are my professional peers and friends, who I will hang out with and, that I haven't seen for a long time and I'm very, very happy to see. And also potentially people who have read my work and might want to say hi to me. And also people who are organising the convention who may want to speak to me because I am on the programme. If all of those people and all of those differing social subroutines are happening at the same time as arriving at the convention hotel, my brain starts to get fried. I literally don't know how to behave, because there are different modes of interaction that I click into depending on the situation. Am I there as a professional who has effectively been hired, is the wrong word because we're not usually paid for going to conventions, but who has committed to a public appearance on some panels, maybe giving a talk, a workshop, an interview or whatever? I'm there as a person doing my job. If my writer buddies are there, I'm there as a person who is their friend. I'm there as M, who they've probably got drunk with, who we've been friends with for a long time, that we have that, oh, I'm so glad to see you again, because we don't see each other for many, many months. That's a whole other different set of behaviours. And then if there's somebody who comes over and says, are you Emma Newman? Then I have to identify why they're asking that question. And if they look kind of nervous or kind of excited, then I prep myself for, when I say yes, for them to either ask for a book to be signed. Sometimes people go very red and kind of bounce up and down a lot, which I still feel find quite strange. People get excited about meeting me sometimes, which is weird because I'm just me. But anyway, all of this happening at the same time as my subroutine of I have arrived at the hotel and now I am going to go to the reception desk and no, my brain just goes no. And I start to shut down. And I tend to just stare at the floor. I try not to engage socially with anybody, and I probably appear to be incredibly rude. And if anyone is watching this who goes to conventions that I go to, that's why this is happening. It's because I'm starting to shut down because I can't handle all of the different inputs and the different expectations at the same time. And whilst shutting down, I am also having the physical and intellectual experience of panic and anxiety. But now I know why. Going to the supermarket is another thing. I find going to the supermarket before the pandemic, this was incredibly stressful. Lots of sensory information, lots of potential unexpected variables. Will there be someone I know there? Will there be some kind of altercation? Will there be some kind of accident? Because all of these things have happened in supermarkets in the past when I've been in them, so I wonder if they will happen again. And then I have to make decisions about food, which I don't find easy or natural at all. And so, yes, I've always found it incredibly difficult. So understanding that this is because of my autistic brain, why is that useful? Well, I know I will be a lot less mean to myself for not being able to handle it. But also with supermarkets, my best friend, who unsurprisingly is also autistic, suggested putting headphones in and listening to the same piece of music, the same album. And I started to do that going to the supermarket, and it helped because it blocked out other stimuli. The only noise stimulus that was coming into my brain was music that I knew and made me happy, and it helped. So number 3, dysregulation. Again, this is something which I find very difficult to put into words, because this is a whole new thing that I'm learning about and kind of coming to terms with since the diagnosis. Dysregulation for me is a very physical thing, I've come to realize. And again, in the past, I was interpreting it as anxiety. And yes, it feels like it. Yes, it has some of the hallmarks of it. But again, it's all about breaking that mental spiraling that I felt before of, why do I feel this way? There must be something wrong. Oh, there's nothing wrong. Then there's something wrong with me. Oh my God, no, there's nothing wrong with me that I can tell. So there must be something that's going to happen. I must have some kind of sense, some spidey sense that something is going to go wrong. And that kind of panicky thought process. Dysregulation, for me, happens if I get too excited about things. I do get very excited about things, especially things I love. And I find it very difficult to manage. And so I suppress how I naturally want to express that a lot when I'm masking, so I don't freak people out around me. I'm going to have to do a whole video on masking, but not now. So yeah, if I get really, really excited, even if I'm in an environment where I don't have to mask, expressing the excitement leads to dysregulation as well, is dysregulation, I guess, when I've got overloaded, as I've described before. But also if I've been through a very intensely emotional period and have been very upset, even if it's past, I am left dysregulated. If I'm still emotional for some reason, again, dysregulated. If I've done loads of intense work, whether that's physical or intellectual work, doesn't matter. If there's been long periods of concentration, when I come out of that state, out of that focus, I can feel really, really jumbled, I think is the best way to describe it. All of this can create the sense of anxiety and panic in the body. And the way that I've found the diagnosis helps is that to be able to identify that and say, I am dysregulated. I need to stop whatever it is I'm doing. I maybe need to remove myself from whatever environment that I'm in. And I need to be alone, and I need to be alone a lot. And I need to find something that will calm me down and soothe me. I don't know, doing a jigsaw puzzle, listening to some music, whatever, just so that I can get myself back to some kind of equilibrium. It has nothing to do with anxiety. It has nothing to do with there being a real or unreal perceived threat. It is just a state of being unbalanced, being out of equilibrium. And understanding that has been incredibly helpful, incredibly helpful. I guess there was a kind of a need to internally understand what was happening all the time before. And because of that diagnosis, I thought, I have anxiety, and it led to a series of coping mechanisms that could not help, because that was not actually what was going on. Now that I understand what is going on in my brain and my body, I can address the underlying causes. I understand the mechanisms involved, so I can then deal with them. And the other thing that all of this, all 3 types and the understanding of them gives me, is more compassion for myself. Because Before, I was just so frustrated with being anxious all the time, and it was like, why? Why can't you just be normal? Like all the time in my brain. And yes, that I do still feel like that. But there is room for more compassion when I have those thoughts, and then I can say, because my brain cannot handle all of this information right now, and that's okay. My brain can do really great stuff sometimes. It can write books, yay! But it can also get really fried in a hotel lobby when there are more than 3 groups of people who want to talk to me at the same time, whilst I'm trying to go through getting a room key. The diagnosis, even though it didn't come until the age of 44, is already helping me a huge amount. And that's why I have made this video, because I can say, hey, it does help if you are going through the absolutely awful experience of trying to get a diagnosis. It is worth it, in my opinion. But also, if you are unable to get an assessment because of money, because of all sorts of horrendous things caused by unfettered late-stage capitalism and patriarchy and all of the things that I hate flames on the side of my face. If there are barriers to you getting a diagnosis and getting the help you need, what I dearly hope is that by me trying to explain how this is helping me might invite you to think, hey, I wonder if this could help me too. I'll think about this differently. Because if someone had said this to me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, my life would have been so much easier. So I hope this helps. And if you are struggling with anxiety and you're not sure if it's anxiety or potentially because of being autistic, that's okay. Autistic people also get very anxious. I'm also very anxious because the world is really hard to navigate when you're autistic. All of these things overlap. It's messy, it can be chaotic. That's okay. It's okay if you're not really sure. All I would ask is that you try to find self-compassion, because that's something I couldn't before. Hang in there. Take care. Hello, my lovelies. I just wanted to say sorry that my voice is so croaky in these videos. It's just that I get really stressed in front of a camera, and that makes me tense, and then that tension makes my throat kind of close up and I get a bit croaky. See, I really was made for audiobooks and radio, you see. I just can't handle cameras. I'm doing my best. Also, if you found this video useful, please do like, subscribe and share it, because it means that YouTube will be more likely to show it to other people who might also be helped by it. And that's what these videos are for, to help people. And if you liked it and found it interesting or helpful, my Ko-fi and Patreon details are at the bottom of this page and in the description below. Every supporter really helps. And a big thank you to all of my patrons who enable me to make these videos. Thank you, my lovelies. Bye.